button. Hello, YouTube. Let's do some Feedback Friday. Let's jump into it. All right, let's go. Oh, apps are updating. Okay, well, that's nice. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Hi, Perceptron. Perceptron. So Perceptron is like a transformer that just turns into a giant eyeball. It's like Unicron, but instead of a planet, it's just a big eyeball. Okay. What do we think? What do we think so far? So I would say that this looks like it's going pretty well here. I like how the face is going. I like the got the cat face looking correct. You know, the dark nose and mouth. Cats tend to have like a very black outline to their mouth, so that's nice. And you have it connected to the nose, and you have the dark outlines around the eyes. So I think the face is looking pretty good. Pretty good. I always find this figure interesting whenever I see it, because this one is definitely like, this figure is a perfect example of simplifying cloth. Because the cloth, as you can see, like the sculpt is really detailed. There's tons of little folds and stuff. So it is a good exercise in like, how do you simplify these to create more general shapes. Hi, Dan. The sword is looking okay. All right, so let's get to it. Okay, so where do I think we could be better? So from a general standpoint, I think if we kind of zoom out, you can look a little better. I think the face has pretty good focus, but it could be a little better. I think some of the definition in parts is maybe a little lacking. We're going to try and break these shapes down even more into more simple forms. I'll have to say, this is a bit of a gripe. Whoop, that's the wrong brush. One thing I'm not in love with is the cast shadow of the sword hilt here on the cloth. This sort of makes the assumption that the light is very straight on. And I'm not really seeing that shadow like continue across his shoulder or anything. I see it here, but I don't think you maybe went quite far enough on the contrast. Also, when the sun gets very low like that, so to get a lighting direction that is this, you guys see that? Right, to get a lighting direction that is low enough that it's going to cast a shadow almost straight backwards, you would make the assumption that it's some kind of like sunset or sunrise. And I don't get I'm not picking up the ambience that I would expect to see in that sort of, that sort of lighting, right? So I would maybe consider just getting rid of it, but let's do this. Okay, so we're going to set this to multiply, and we're going to pick a color that's, I don't know, some kind of dark turquoisey sort of tone, something like this. And we're going to think about how we can like simplify these shapes even more. So what do we have on his head, right? We have basically a half sphere. His neck is a little more complicated, but it's kind of a combination of a sphere and a cylinder. And then the shoulders is kind of spherical also. Okay, so one thing I would do is we're gonna like simplify these shapes. So we have other shapes on top of these cylinders and spheres. Okay, but I'm gonna first thing is just like try and get more of this overall shape in. All right, so we want to really push the shadows on some of these parts in order to make that lighting direction more obvious. So I'm not even worried about the micro folds here. What I'm concerned with is more the individual, like the overall shape of the turbine, right? So getting this shape in and making this more rounded. Okay. So here, right, as we come away from the light, this should start to get darker. All right, something like this. You can also get a little darker as you come further down the model. This will increase the contrast between the top and bottom to give a little more focus where you want. Okay. And then just with that, I think we've already started to like create a little more shape to the turbine. Okay. Then we need to find with some of this highlight color. All right. We need to find some of these folds and stuff that share similar shape, right? So now we can start to get some of these larger forms. Think of these as like triangles. Okay, so one's on the mouth. We'll catch some over here, which you've done. All right, this sort of shape here, this sort of shape right here. Okay, see this these triangles, right? So we create these triangles. And then you have to blend them in a little bit, but we want to make that lighting direction very clear, you know? What faces towards the light, what faces away from the light. And then on this guy, right, the light is going to be more in this center area where maybe we get some light like this. Okay. So with those two, let's put these on the same group. Okay, so you can see that we've made the shapes, right, more obvious. Trying to define that form as much as possible. Okay. Then you could do the same thing for this like gray blue kind of thing. So we can come down here and we can come back and tone this stuff down. Right, so as it starts to round over his shoulder, this back shoulder will be much darker. This front plane will be much lighter, right? And then we push that contrast more. Okay? Now, let's look at the face. What's the brightest value we have? We have this almost white, but not really on the face. I think on the face we can also push the light more. I think the shadows are pretty good, but I think we can go a little bit lighter. Okay, So just a little bit more light on the nose and on the, well, I guess the like upper lip, the front of the muzzle. All right, so we can push that light just a little bit further, and then we're gonna grab a color in between. Like I like this brownish color you have here. I want to get this kind of saturated orange. And we're going to add a little bit more, just a little bit more saturation in the like middle values. And it got very gray brown. So let's try and add some of that warmth back. Right, because when you push the contrast like this, it can be very easy to like lose the like color in the midtone. So sometimes we have to come back and restore that color a little. Okay, so try and round over these shapes down here. And I think we'll end up with something a little more contrasty and give a little better focus on the face, right? So you should be able to see the difference now. This is a little nitpick, but when you're doing the dots in the eyes, try and keep them on the same side as each other. So if we're going to do this one here, this one should be here, not here, right? So they should be on the same spot on the eyes, all right? There's like micro detailing here that we can do. We can try and get this shape a little more rounded or a little more sharp in some areas, right? So in the nose, we want to try and make these as sharp as possible. All right, so we can use some of the highlight color in order to really make that shape clear. And then don't be, guys, like when the light is kind of low like this, okay, don't be afraid to like paint up sort of in the nostrils, right? So you can push some light up here and it's going to make that shape a little clearer, right? So we'll see this little shape right here. I'm not saying go crazy with it, but you can put a little bit of light in there to make that nostril shape a little sharper, okay? All right, now as we get lower, right, so on these leathers and stuff, okay, we need to dark line a little bit more, right? We need to separate this stuff out a little bit further. Make sure we get these lines nice and clean. Okay, so like this overlaps, right? So we need to really make that really well defined and overlapped. Same with this, okay? Push this, define these little rivet things. All right, this black lining can go a long way to creating that definition you want in these areas. All right. Same with all this stuff, right? So like this needs some dark lining here in order to make that shape more clear. Okay, then that means all of these like buckles and stuff, they need to have these dark outlines in order to separate them. Cool. All right. Then I think the last little thing here I would recommend is to also push the light a bit further on the bone handle. Okay. Cool. Hope that's helpful. So, yeah. Don't be afraid to push a little more. Go a little bit more dramatic. And then you can always pull it back. All right. And then sort of everything together, right? Okay. Next. Space Marine. Michael paints minis. Hello. Hi, Conton. Also. Hello, hello. A Space Marine. How's it going here? It's looking pretty good. So I'm going to assume this is supposed to be some kind of, I'm guessing some kind of space wolf. What do I think? What do I think? Okay. I don't think this is the best photo because based on the photo, the like lights are all kind of off to the top right, which is good, right? So I think the main viewing angle would be a little bit better with him like spun that way. But it's going pretty well. I think one of the things I'm seeing is we need to bring again with the whole dark lining thing, right? Some of these dark lines as you were doing highlights get a little lost, so you want to like try and come back and clean this stuff up. Okay. Like in here where some of the lines are like getting in the gaps, right? You have to do the black lining like around the foot and stuff. I don't think the feet are done, but this is definitely areas where you want to like make sure you come back and clean this stuff up, you know? Like get those lines pretty sharp there. And there's definitely some like see like in here, right? You've gotten paint like inside of these little vents. You want to fix that, right? So like get rid of this stuff. Okay, you have to come back and clean this up. And then we want to make sure some of these areas are like really sharp, you know? So like here where it got a little messy, we can make sure that there's a nice clean transition there. You can come back and try and like clean up this edge. I think like sort of the main thing I'm seeing, I get you're trying to do like this sort of textured surface. We have to sort of combine the textured look with clean line work, right? So that we get a nice contrast between the two. Like if the surface is kind of noisy, we're going to use like the sharp edges and to keep the mini kind of readable here. So even like on the belt, right? I can see where there's there should be brown on top of this stuff. Okay. Like this, I guess you still have to do, but it's a bit of a noisy, it's a bit just too noisy here. All right, now the freehand, I get this is like super small, okay? But this is like once you've painted a freehand like this, you want to come back with the base coat and like try and where it got a little messy, right? Like try and come back and cut back in and clean this stuff up. Okay? Like where you have paint and lines, otherwise this is really hard to read this shape. Okay? You can also come back with some of this darker brown. It's also very gray. And try and cut back across these lines to make these shapes and design more obvious. The one on the knee is probably the roughest part. It's very difficult to see exactly what's going on here. Okay, you're trying to do this sort of knot work, but it's just not quite there in terms of like how sharp it needs to be really readable and clear. Okay, so you got to come back with the, like I said, come back with the base blue and clean those lines up. All right, this is also one of those things where like I don't really know what's happening in here. Okay, from a design perspective, what do you guys know about what do you guys know about Celtic knots? We want to talk about Celtic knots for a second, how you approach Celtic knots. Okay, if anyone finds that interesting, Celtic or like Viking knot work, right? So let's say you want to do a knot design, right? So this is a pretty common one. You get something like this. Hold on, let me make it bigger. All right, so you'll get a design like this. All right, you ever seen this one? So this is like a super simple design shape that's like reused in these kind of motifs. Okay. So what happens is when you do Celtic knots, you want to try and over-under everything, okay? So the way I would do it is I would draw the shape like this. All right, and then you come back with whatever the base color is. Let's just use the table, for example, okay? So you then erase part of the knot like this on both sides of the line. Okay, so now that one goes over, right? So what does that mean for if we were to continue this line this way, right? What does it have to do next? It has to go under. So we go under, then it loops back around. Now it needs to go over again. And that's like the general, then you're done, right? So it has 3 intersections. It goes over, under, right? Over, under. Okay? So here where I look, there's too many intersections happening, and it's not very clear when something goes over and when something goes under. So let's take the dark brown. Okay, so here it goes over, right? So what does that mean for the next one? Well, it needs to go under this one, right? And then it would go over again. So it would come back this way, right? So it would come back this way. And then it goes, so this one goes under, right? So that means here it should go over this one. And then under again. And then it just sort of becomes, I don't know what's quite going on. And like here it like splits off, which is another not very typical design pattern. Right, so you want to make sure that you're doing that over under, okay? If I was doing this shape, right? This is pretty complicated. I've done some freehand knot work, like just straight up freehand. But what I would do is I would the way I would approach something like this. So I would literally like project this out onto a simple shape like this. Okay, this is sort of the shape of his shin, like projected onto a flat surface, like unwrapped. Hello. So I would project that out, and then I would try and design something right from there. So I would draw it out beforehand if it's a really complicated design. So maybe it does something like this, where it comes around and then sort of loops this way. I also think that it would, sometimes you want to like try and reinforce the border. Okay, so you can try and draw like this to reinforce the border, and then you start thinking of ways to like split off from there. So you think about like maybe it comes up like this and then it starts to loop this way, right? And then it maybe loops back around. It would take me a while to draw something, but you kind of get the idea. And then you could like introduce another pattern this direction or something, right? And you then take and start erasing the line work where you've split off to do other stuff. Okay? So it's like you do all that, and then you find a way to make this come back and like reconnect or whatever to do whatever sort of design pattern that you're looking for. But I would, look at references of line work and just find that like things like this where it just became a bit of a mess and it's all just sort of noise, that you're working on those sort of patterns. Okay? All right. If you look at boat carving, it can get like really complicated. Like, so Celtic knot stuff they often did with ropes and things, but like Viking designs are often carved into wood, and yeah, they can get really complicated. Eric, would the line work only apply to certain metals or pretty much any kind of NMM? So the line work here, so if we're talking about the line work, the way this would actually be done, right? If you were to think about like this knee pad or whatever, would very likely be like chased into the surface, right? So they would engrave and chase this. So you would have like dark sections here. Right? You're trying to emulate a recessed edge. Okay, so it would have like a dark line above that goes around the design. Okay, so you'd have like dark lines that create this. We're basically doing this, right? Or this in the surface, but smaller. So you have these like dark lines that create the edge. Okay. And then what I would also do is you should come back with this blue, and you should create a light line that goes underneath the blue. Okay? Or that goes underneath the design. So it's like the blue paint or whatever is left exposed or like ungilded, I guess. And you create that dark, that like three-dimensional shape. Okay? So it's like it's set into the metal. Right? So they carve out this V, okay? This V groove, and then they plate the metal part. Right? So you'd have under these, you would have like this dark line next to this light line, and then even these areas here where they cross over, it should have like a light that sort of chases the top edge. And you create this three-dimensional effect on the surface. Yeah, whether they would do this with like in the future by hand with engraving, or if they do use acid or something to like etch this design into the surface, you would still have this dark effect, you know? Makes sense? I hope. And that means this one would be dark brown. This one would be dark blue. Okay. But you should see with the lines, right? It's like those little highlights and stuff, they make this design like pop out of the surface more. Cool. All right. The big green boy. Green Man. Never seen this figure in my life. So this one is definitely painted to look like mine. At least to an extent, like color scheme wise, it's painted in my color scheme. So I'm assuming they were following mine as reference. Okay. And I think it looks pretty good. I don't love the picture you took because everything is like way too blue. Because I know, but let's fix the color balance real quick. Because this thing it should not be this blue, right? That Chimera box is black, so. How do I just change everything at once? I'm going to assume that's a little bit closer at least. All right, so I think it's going pretty well. You got most of the muscle shapes in and stuff are all looking good. The metallics could definitely be a little more contrasty here. Again, this picture is kind of washed out, so this is tough. But one thing I definitely notice is like something like this, right? So we have a geometric shape here. It's like a staircase as these boxes stack on top of each other. This plane, let me grab like a red to really demonstrate what I'm talking about. So this plane, and this plane are all the same, okay? So that means they should have the same reflection, okay? So if this one does something like this, that means these guys should be the same reflection, right? That means it's getting a little darker as we come, or a little lighter as we come down. Blah, 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 like this. Okay. And then it could like change again, but it should roughly be similar. All right. So keep that in mind when you do metallics like this, that like when you have coplanar surfaces. You guys know what do you know what I mean when I say coplanar? Coplanar refers to two surfaces that are the same orientation in three-dimensional space. I can move this hand forward, right? I can go like this and they remain coplanar, and I can go like this and they're coplanar, but when I rotate one, now they're not, okay? So it's like this is not coplanar, this is, this still is, this is, right? So as I shift and move them around, or these are coplanar, I can move them up and down. All right, but they're on the same, they have the same orientation in three-dimensional space. I don't even know if that's right. Maybe a mathematician could tell me if coplanar is actually the right word for that, or if there's another word for objects that share the same orientation but are translated in three-dimensional space. Hello. Okay, so you want to make sure you do that. And then sometimes, so like areas like here, right? Maybe you don't want to push this far, okay? Maybe you want to create a little more definition and just like, maybe it's only that bright, right? But you did it well here, right? So that the gold creates a nice contrast against that kind of teal blue color. Okay. If you're going for the spirit wolf thing, you need to push this light more. Like this shadow is too dark for here. So it should be just like a nice bright blue as the like shadow color. And then you can push the light more if you need to. Okay. Because he's supposed to be like made of, he's like a ghost wolf thing and made of light. I asked, pretty sure I asked Emil what the heck this thing was supposed to be, and he was like, I don't know. Some kind of forest spirit or something. Coplanar is correct? Okay. So we want to up that a little bit. Good, I'm glad I'm not talking out of my ass. At least when it comes to terminology. And then we can create a little more glow on this stuff. So you're not really going to get any on the bottom of the hands because of the way it's facing, but you can get some on like the inside of the thumb and these fingers, right? And then you can get a little bit, like you imagine the light could come sort of down this way and catch a little bit on on the fur down here. We might get some, but you can see like when I try and add blue light to this that it doesn't really affect it at all. Right? And then you can create some nice little reflections in the gold. Okay. They would be very small though, so don't like go overboard with them, but you can create some little bits of reflection of the coplanar isn't correct. In technical geometry language, it means lying within the same two-dimensional plane. I think parallel planes. Okay. So yeah, when you're talking about 3D space, it's different. Let me know. See if somebody can find the exact terminology. I would appreciate I like to make sure I'm using the right verbiage, because I believe how we talk about miniatures is also how we think about miniatures. Okay? How we think about them is how we paint. All right? So you can get a little more OSL there. I think the animals are pretty good. You can maybe try and make them a little more textured and stuff. But I think that's all pretty nice. I think the musculature and stuff is quite good. It's a little blurry, so it's hard for me to say exactly, but I think, I mean, you know, you painted it based on a pretty good paint job, so I think it's pretty good. I just noticed I'm on the wrong camera. It's supposed to be on this one. I think some of these areas you can start to get into more like micro detailing, right? Like beaver tails have this, they're very black, but have this kind of like textured surface to them. So you could play around with stippling in some areas to try and create some highlights and stuff, right? Create some different texture. Okay. Same with like the hairs, like you can try and create like maybe they're there and I just can't see them because the picture's slightly a little out of focus, but you can try and create some texture and stuff on that. But in general, I would say that it looks quite good, man. I'm going to try and maybe add some more like warmth or saturation to some of these leathers. It can be very easy for the wood and leather to get a little lost in each other here, so this is an opportunity that I would take to push that stuff a little bit. Okay? All right. Hi, Gary. Yep. Different in 3D space. Coplanar is a collection of office aligned within the 2D plane. Parallel planes would be planes with the same orientation, even if those planes are offset from another one. Nice. It's parallel planes. Oh, we got physicists. the physicists in the chat. Yeah, but where's the geometry PhD? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of a hair on my screen. All right, what do we think? So, ooh, man, this hair looks, not your painting, but the actual sculpt of the hair Rough. Rough. I don't know where this mini is from. I'm gonna assume this is like D&D or something. Okay. This is one of those times where I definitely, for feedback purposes, this is for the purposes of feedback. I would appreciate it if you guys took photos where I could see the miniature. I get like this looks cool on a black background because it's very moody, but for review purposes, it's very difficult for me to see exactly what's going on because of how dark it is, right? I can't even see some of the like the silhouette of the leg. I can't see all of the details of the wing and stuff. So in this instance, a gray background would be much better for me to be able to like review the figure. Okay, how you want to display it afterwards is that's up to you. Then you can do it on a black background. But all right, yeah, shape here. Okay, so we need to add some more light, right? And we can go with like a cool blue or something. I guess works. Maybe I guess yours seems to be a slightly more yellow, but we want to get this shape a little more clear, so try and get some more light on the hands, right? You've got light on the face, but we need to think about like the overall top of the face before we go worrying about like the individual little wrinkles, you know, like here on the ear. Okay. Okay, we want to make sure we get this stuff in first. All right, so that we've got some nice clear shape. Like I can't see his jaw or teeth at all. It looks like you haven't painted them actually. All right, so bigger shapes, the big main shapes we need to get in, even if this stuff like it needs to be defined. Now the hair, okay, hair, break it down into tufts first, right? So we can sort of see like this is a shape, this is a shape, this is a shape, right? So I'm breaking it down into tufts of hair. Right? Breaking it down into tufts, and then we'll begin to create some form to that, right? So we want to create some overall shape to the tufts. Okay, so it's like this one, this one, this one, right? See how we're starting to create like more general form to each one of these? Then once you've done that, then you can come back and start to add like individual hairs, okay? So you would come back with like a light orangish tone or whatever, something in your color palette, and begin to paint like the individual strands. Okay, so you start creating, and this is, I've talked about this a lot, but don't try and paint the actual like sculpted hairs. Just follow the rhythm, the flow of the sculpt. You let that inform you where to paint the lines, all right, or like what direction to paint your brush strokes should travel. Okay, and you'll get a much more natural hair flow, even on a model with like very sharp sculpted fur. Okay, What's this? Try and create some more separation here. Alright, so it's like I'm going to separate these from the groundwork. They're not the same color. Some of the line here are like the shadows are like way too thick on the skull, like skulls. I wish there was a good place to get stuff like this. Anybody know any like 3D printing or whatever? If you know one where there's like 3D printing like rib cages and stuff for basing, let me post it in Discord. I'd be interested. Like I know Epic Basing makes a bunch of cool stuff, but I don't know if they have like a bone one. If not, I'll talk to them and be like, hey, you guys should make like skeleton bits. Because it's always skulls, right? Like, this dude's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 skulls, 7 maybe. It's the elusive 7-headed man here. There's one rib cage. Okay. So, with that, you should see that there's like a bit more, all of this said, right? Like this is going to do a lot. Just like pushing the light here. And then, yeah, then it's like individual detail work. Alright, so I think that's it for the ones I had downloaded, so I need to grab other ones. So I will be I'll be right back, and then when I come back we will get through some more. So I need to go get a drink and stuff, so BRB. Alright, let's see what we got. Let's check the Discord again. So we looked at the Chimera. What is this picture now? Alright, I guess it's alright. I thought it was cut off. What's the camera? Oh, so we are caught up with last week. Alright. So, Thomas. Thank you. All right, we're gonna do the thing that we do. So this looks pretty good, I will say, but I can already see something. Do you guys know what I'm gonna say? What am I gonna say, chat? What's it gonna be? What's Eric gonna say? Yeah, the face specifically, shadows on the face seems to be the issue here. We have a pretty strong light source coming in from the right, okay? And based on the values that I see on the jacket and the neck, right? And the hair here, I think the contrast on the face just isn't quite enough, all right? So these shadows, oops. Shadows on the face, you can push a lot more. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a nice dark brown color. Okay. Something like this. Okay. And we're going to push some shadow work in on the face. So we need to, thinking of the lights coming in from this direction, the light side of the face is really nice, We just need some more shadow here. All right. So as the face curves around this direction, we're going to reduce the light over here. All right. And you should see already that it's much more consistent with the lighting of the jacket and stuff. Okay, so this gives some more definition and shape to the face and makes the lighting direction more consistent. All right, based off this right to left light. Then you can, blend it out and everything and make it super smooth. But then we can push some of the light a little, or the shadows a little bit more in some areas that we need to create, these occlusion shadows. What's that? Ucklesar, hello. And I missed Watcha. And Daretum, hello. Thanks, welcome, guys. Sorry I missed it. All right. Don't be afraid to push the contrast. Better? All right, next thing I'm seeing is we need to work a little bit on just cleaning this stuff up. So this is laying over top of the skin. It should be, we should have like a sort of dark reddish tone here that separates these. Because that lays on top of the skin. I like this red you have here, but you could have a little bit more. So let's go with like a color, some sort of color effect. All right, this little touch here. I like this. This is good. The light coming in the ear like that. All right, so we add just a touch more red in the face right there. Look at the subtle difference between this and this, right? If you were a cyborg, would you smoke? I'm not a cyborg and I smoke. So, yeah. Do I have robot lungs? And do they damage my robot lungs? I guess I could just buy new robot lungs. Okay. So I think that's the big thing. Because otherwise I'm liking where it's going. I think you could maybe try and get a little bit more of this yellow into the skin, okay? Oops. Because you have this very like yellowish sort of light source here, like just a touch, glaze a little bit more yellow. And then that final highlight, right? They have a little bit more of a yellowish tone to it, and that'll create a work a little better with your ambience. Because if we go based on the metallics, right, we can see that the light source is very yellow. So we want to try and work that in to the skin. It's a subtle thing, but you should be able to feel like a difference in temperature here, okay? All right. Egg guacamole. Hello. El guacamole. Thanks for the tier 1. Appreciate it. El guacamole. Olinsky. Been working on this recently. My main concerns are with the back of the model, the guns, the base, and general direction of the piece. I took the photo with my phone after noticing the base was not completely visible in the first photos. That's why it's slightly different. Okay. Are his nipples that high? That's weird. I would expect them to be lower. I would expect them to be like here. So maybe fix that. Yeah, I think this is going pretty well. I like quite a bit of what's going on. I'm gonna look at the other picture because I think your camera phone is a little washed out. Or not your camera phone, but damn it, why didn't it download? Why is it saying I'm not allowed to download this one? All right, weird. I feel like your camera is a little is a little washed out, so maybe try and adjust some things there. But okay, this gives me a better sense. Yeah, it's definitely warmer. Yeah, this is good. I don't quite know what this is. What that's supposed to be. But I like where the piece is at. There's some areas around here where, yeah, there's a little bit of cleanup left to do, like the neck here, the little necklace thing. I don't know, is it a collar or is it his neck? But the little odd, I guess it's a collar, huh? Like this goes up like this. But then I don't understand what that is. It's like the algae that forms on still water. Okay. Amon Ra. Hello. Thank you for following. Overall, I would say, yeah, it's quite good, honestly. Like, some of the leather, maybe got a little dark, but I think you could maybe, like, pump the saturation a little bit in the leather. Like, come back with an ink and try and give it a little more warmth. When you go to highlight it, like with these tan browns, it can often lose a bit of the color. So, like the boots, you have this, but maybe the boots also need like a little bit more highlight. So something like this, right? Then it looks like there's some kind of lip on the boot or whatever. But I think overall, yeah, it's quite good. The stomach looks pretty good. I think this highlight is maybe a bit much. So I would maybe tone this down just a little bit. Just a touch here, and then I would maybe try and push the light just a touch more on a few parts, right? So like the top of the rib cage here, a couple of these muscles. I get he's like got a weird, like he's like leaning, right? But that should help a little bit. There's also like here, you want to try and get a little bit of light in there. Not quite that much shadow in the rib cage here. And then sneak some light in there. But yeah, this is cool. Yeah, I like the amount of light you have on the chest. Let's push it just a tiny bit further. And then maybe a tiny bit more on certain parts of the face, like especially the front of the forehead here. Like less on top and more slightly on the front, okay? And then you can connect these down so that highlight like connects to each other. I would work on the base some more. Like this isn't quite working for me. This is a little too similar to the boots, so I would maybe bring the light up a little more on the base. As I think on the gun here, you can have try and like catch a couple more little corners and stuff. Like this looks good. The gun's maybe a little too soft, right? So let's try and like this looks nice. I would like to see a couple more little light catches, you know? These little dots and things where the light just happens to hit the corner and stuff like that. Okay. I can't see what's going on there, but those few little highlights will help define those things a little bit further. But yeah, cool. Nice. I'm gonna say I'm not like super in love with the purple mask. Is there a reason specifically you went with purple, or like would red also work if you decided to go with like red or something instead? I think the reason I'm asking is it's like it feels very outside with you also are using like red and blue here, so I would maybe choose like okay. I would maybe choose like one. And don't, like, even though you're using a limited palette, like, you can splash color in, right? Like, if you wanted to, like, you could use like a really intense color here. I think a red might work better. Sometimes all the fella's got is a purple mask. Yeah. I think something more similar to the orange, like what I'm getting at is like you've got such a warm color palette overall. Like everything is super warm. And then you splash in, which purple is kind of an either or, right? And you're using purple in the shadows, but it's still on the warm side, right? Because it's mixed with other things. By using a more warm color here, right? And just eliminating any cold tones. Those cold tones tend to like stand out a little too much. So instead we use like a saturated warm tone to like create that really intense splash color while like maintaining the overall color temperature of the like color temperature harmony of the whole piece, you know? What do you guys think? Do you like the red or the purple better? Well, Polinsky, I guess it's really up to you because it's your model, but I don't know. Which one do you prefer? The purple or the red? All right. Well, I hope that was helpful. Cool. I'll look at the back real fast just because you specifically mentioned the back. Whoa. Guys are adding more. Okay, I mean the back has some cleanup to do. Like you gotta come in and clean this up some more. Don't be afraid to use these like dark shadows on the back, right? The one you're using on his side. Don't be afraid to use those as like to create some definition on the back. So those are your your occlusion shadows, right? So you can use that on the arm and stuff too to get some muscle definition back there. And yeah, I can see clean up areas like on the skull and stuff. Okay. Sable Corgi. Squad for competition at Nova, looking for a quick review of overall cohesion and what most needs improving. Work in progress to blend smoke, add internal glow, refine robes, particularly on the model rear, and as you suggested, add burgundy to enrich. Okay, then pick if gray wooden squad base should be black or dark red. Black. You should paint it black. And smaller. This is too big. Okay? Like, bring them a little closer together and make this... This could be like nearly half the size for this 4-man squad. Alright? So this is too much. So, or maybe like 2/3 the size, but definitely smaller. Bring them together a little more. I don't love this like huge base thing. I'm thinking like it's probably could be like the size of an index card or something, right? Then you could stagger them if you wanted to a little bit, but a little smaller. I mean, I think it's going really well. We already talked about these, so I'm not gonna like do too much paint overs and stuff. I just want to like look at it, and I think everything you've mentioned, like definitely the green glow in the smoke is one of the things I picked up on as like you should definitely do. Psst. You see this? Look at this corner of this book right here. You see that? That's metal. Fix that. Make sure you didn't miss any little detail parts. Both the little corners. I think you can see what I'm talking about. The corners of the book need to be fixed. Yeah, I mean, I think they're nice. But yep, there's definitely some little final touches. This guy is definitely the best of them, but this guy's robes probably could use a little more work, softening some of those things up, like blending that out a little bit. But this guy's smoke is good. This guy's smoke needs a tiny bit more highlights, and then both of them need that glow. But yeah, it's going well. So finish up those things, and I think you are done. Okay. Nice little squad you got here. You could try and do some like freehand on the ribbon thing here, but I don't know if it's that important. I would maybe consider doing the same texture you did on his ribbons, like just use that on here also. I guess there's one supposed to be parchment and one's supposed to be like actual wraps, but I don't know. Or just try and do a little freehand. But yeah, nice job. Does he have a floaty foot? I would check that also. It can sometimes be hard to see in pictures, but there is a thing called floaty feet. Okay, and that's definitely like where the model's feet aren't quite perfectly touching the base. Maybe it's because you just haven't glued them down yet. But I would check to make sure his feet are not floating. Okay, and not fully pushed in. Yeah. But yeah, nice job. Cool. Who's that? Happy Thoughts. Hello. JC. Hey, Eric. Just looking for general feedback on Elf Rider to take to the next piece. It was a challenging model, but I enjoy it heaps. This is a cool model. I like this Lucas model. Probably one of my favorites he's done. This horse texture is very nice. So is that. This dude's getting pretty good, guys. I don't love this. Skin tone's awesome. Hairs looks great. The horse is like really nice. I think the leather's maybe slightly off here. So let's open it up real quick and check. And let me just check the backside real fast. Yeah, this looks pretty good. Yeah, so let's look at him. So what I was talking about with the leather is I don't quite have this shape, right? You've done this shape with like the tension curve to the, right? You have this sort of thing like this, right? Where the leather sort of curves, which is good. But you don't have the big, like, you don't quite have the big overall curve to the leather. So what I would do is I would come back with more mid-tone, and try and like create some roundedness to the leather here, right? Some of the cylindrical shape to the leather. Okay. Gonna often get stuck on texturing, right? We get sort of lost in the texture in that rounded effect, but then we lose the overall shape. So increasing the light here a little bit will bring that general shape to the leather back. So give it like a hot spot like that. Yeah, the horse texture is super good. All that stuff. I don't really have anything to say there. I think his skin looks really nice. His face in particular is super good. What I was saying about not liking this, okay, is I don't think it quite lives up to what you've done elsewhere. Right? It just feels not quite to the same level of how well you've done the texture elsewhere. Probably my biggest issue with it is it doesn't have like a fringed edge, which I would expect it to if you were going to do this as like claw or like a fur little pelt thing. It's like too clean of a line for me to really read as pelt, and I think the line work itself is maybe a little too heavy and too like perfectly straight. It's like everything is like perfectly straight, instead of having more like flow and crisscrossing to it, you know. So in my opinion, I would just change it to fabric. Like, I would just pick a color, whatever that color is, right? And I would just go with a fabric tone. Maybe a colder tone of some kind, some sort of like bluish fabric or something, because you're using some blue as accent colors, like particularly in the axe, like the metal, right? You've got these little like beads and stuff in the hair, the eyes have this blue tone. So this might be a good opportunity to like use some blue. Maybe something a little a little darker, right? JC's gonna be like, oh my god, you've all that time I spent on that fur. Yeah, I really think without the like fringed edge, it just doesn't have that sense, you know, of like, hey, this is a something like this. And then we can play with the shape and whatever, like bringing back that texture, but or not texture, but the folds and stuff. And then pushing the light some here. Now you can play with texture, but maybe it's like a woven texture or something like that, you know? But this ultramarine kind of cloth, I think, would work pretty well. I mean, you could do whatever color you feel like's in. But I feel like that fits the aesthetic a little more than this, right? This is also, it feels really close to his skin. So I feel like that separates it a little better too. Like giving that splash color, letting it you know, just be kind of a dark fabric or of some kind. Abyssal. Hi, Fausto. Thanks for the prime. Aladdin? No. It's an elf. It's like with a bit of a Native American sort of with a bit of a Native American vibe to it, you know? Yeah, I think that would help. And it simplifies, right? And gives you like, because I think this is just too noisy, and yeah, it does, like I said, it's driving me nuts with the like it not being fringed on the edge. It's too sharp of a thing to really remind me of fur. Okay. Dave, the pariah. Hey, mine showed up this morning. My pariah arrived. This is good. This is good. I like it. I dig it. Do I really see much of anything that I would like worry about changing much? I think the one thing I kind of see here is you've done it a bit like this. See, this is nice. like these sort of warm tones, right? I think we could play with that a little bit more. You've got these like kind of magenta-ish sort of colors in his skin. Let's play with that, right? So I think we could push this a little bit more. Especially like in the hands and stuff. What is that? Or color burn? Yeah, color burn. Okay, and then like, whoop, way too big. What am I looking for here? Hard light, maybe? So I'm just trying to add some color. Alright, I think we could play around a little bit more with some of these reddish tones. Like, by adding this warmth in certain areas, you give the cold parts like more room to appear cold, okay? So we intentionally use some of this like warmer undertones in order to make the cold tones appear even colder. And then like this, so you're at like this green, I would go even cooler and like a little bit more saturated for the highlights. And I would try and clean this stuff up a little bit and push some of these highlights like even more cold, right? Like you can go into these like sort of turquoisey colors. It doesn't even look turquoise what I'm doing, but oh, that's because I'm on. Right? See this sort of turquoisey feeling? So instead of just a gray, we get like very cool toned with it. It makes the hands a little more obvious, right? But yeah, you can push this quite a bit. Even up here, like I would try and accentuate that creepy smile a little bit more. He's got that Joker smile. Let me push the light just a tiny bit further just to create some highlights in here. Okay? I don't know what you went up to, but just particularly on the face, right? We can push it just that little bit more. And you're going to see it's like, it's not much of a difference, right? But it's enough to like make a subtle change here. I like this a lot. I like what's going on down here. I don't really have anything to say. I like the red. Yeah. Maybe try and clean some of this stuff up just a little bit more. And then the last thing is maybe adding like even more slightly reddish tone. I guess it's supposed to be like, I don't know, glowing or something from the inside. His cloak is weird. But you could maybe push it just a little bit further. Push it just a little bit more. But I like it. It's very cool. The Pariah. Okay. Nice. He's a vampire man. I think he's a vampire anyways. He's vampire adjacent, however vampires work in the world of Kingdom Death. Ooh, on the back here, okay? I would let, you did that red, like on the collar, I would put a little red underneath also, right? Underneath the cloak, like it's light, like shining through, like a webbing sort of thing. Does he eat brains? Maybe. I don't know all his lore yet. Linguistics. We did you. Flapjack. How are we doing on time? All right. I think he just says, hey, look at this. I haven't touched the hair, horns, eyes yet. Okay. Not sure if you're happy with how the face and the clothes are working together. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah, it's a little weird because you've got this blue and then this like kind of warm white. It's not warm, but it's warmer than the skin. So you get this sort of blue skin tone and then the white. I think this might work better if you do this as like just dark, right? Like you go the dark style instead and do everything like very dark except the skin. If you want to try and make it, you know, if we just go like navy blue for everything, like variations on navy blue. Just gonna do this and make all this darker. I think the green could go like way darker. I'll come back and erase the buttons in a second. So you do like this sort of dark gray blue and then like an actual like black blue, right? I think this way you get a little more attention to the face that you're probably looking for. Then we can bring this up a little bit. So it's like the skin, similar-ish in value, but not like quite as bright as the skin. But it has this more like desaturated bluish undertone to it. That way I think we keep more attention to the face here. All right. Yeah, the face is looking pretty good. She needs a... It's like just bothering me that she doesn't have eyebrows right now. I need to paint some eyebrows on her just so I can see her face. Yeah. Okay. All right. So what I would say about the face here is that you've got a little bit of shape here. Like we need to define some things some more. Define Goth girl here. Right, like the mouth. Then, so this is a tough one because how do I explain this? When you're talking about like, if you're thinking about displaying the model like this, right? She's sort of up like this. And I want you guys to look at me when I do this, okay? So when I'm looking straight ahead, right, the lights are kind of where you would expect, like the reflections. You can see like the reflection here, sort of here. But when I turn like this, right, and I kind of look upwards, that whole light, like this shadow goes basically away. And if I was a younger person with no wrinkles, right, like this can almost completely disappear and become a highlight here, right? And this highlight becomes a little more obvious and this one becomes a little more obvious. So like as you lean upwards, right, these lights can kind of shift down. So to say that, all right, so if we go back to the figure, instead of the highlight being here, let's tone her down for a second. Let's like bring it back to a more neutral state before the highlights. Okay, so we brought it back to a neutral state, all right? So instead of the highlights being like higher up on the cheekbone, we can bring some highlights to like sometimes areas that you might not necessarily think. So like maybe the highlights actually sort of here because she's looking up, because she's leaning backwards, you know? And then you get not a highlight here, but higher up on the brow like this, or like the bridge of the nose. You get a light here, right? You get more light like on the like transition line of the mouth. And this light can kind of wrap around a little bit. And then you'll get some light like in here that sort of wraps up around the eye. Then you have to connect those. Right, it could look a little softer this way. Yeah, I'm gonna grab just a touch of this. Try and sharpen that line up a little. Hey, so you see how the lights are like shifted now? Because she's like, you're looking sort of up at her, right? Can make her look a little younger too. So I would look at reference of sort of this like looking up at someone, right? And how the light planes can kind of shift that way. Okay? Cool. Coolio. Cool. Oh, yeah. All right. 2 hours. All right. I'm going to go. Hi. Man, how do I turn that off? Hold on. Hi, guys. I'm turning off the caps thing from Nightbot. It's annoying. Command. How do I do that? Chat moderation. Turn off the excess caps. There we go. There. All right. Reaper Miniatures. Hello. Hi, guys. Welcome in. Welcome to the raid. How are you all doing? Hope everyone's having a fine Friday. Reaper, guys, ReaperCon's next weekend, huh? Who's excited? Who's going? Got some people going, or? Alright, let's look at this one. Finished the shiv and would love a quick once-over for general feedback. Okay. Looks pretty good. Yeah, I think this is nice. Pretty strong. Pretty strong. I like the color palette's pretty good. Face rendering looks nice. Eyes look nice. Hair's good. Values are good. One thing I would say is on the face here, this shadow is a little dark. This gets a little too dark. And then the jawline here, right? So when you're talking about the jawline, you have the line like this. So this is the chin and the jaw. And you have the cheekbone that kind of goes like this. This is round, okay? So you need to round this over, and then the light here, you have more light like this in this area, okay? So you want to move this upwards a little bit. The whole thing could be a little lighter in general based off the lighting direction. All right. So I don't think you actually want to darken it that much. And then when you shadow the jawline here, you want to start to shadow around the bottom of it. Okay, so the light is going to start to fall off as you get lower onto the jaw. You can raise her cheekbones a touch. Right, so really you've got this sort of color here, right? This value here. This should be quite similar on the side of the face, like the lower jaw would not be that shadowed on the light side. This is also a little too dark. You want this a little more neutral and reddish. And this should kind of come up over the nostril a little. Also, if this side of the nose is in shadow, that means that this nostril is also in shadow. Or maybe sort of create a little shadow like this that kind of connects. Okay. So soften this one out a little. It's doesn't need to be quite that bright. And then you can bring that light, this sort of highlight here, right, up into the corner a little bit more. And that highlight is what will create that definition instead. Okay. Same here. We want to reduce this just a touch. Okay, so we're going to soften this out. And depending on how much, like, some people's, this little shape right here, this little section, you know, some people have more soft brow ridge than others. So you can even get like a little bit of light there sometimes, depending on how soft of a shape that is. Certain people are more sharply defined than others. Like to sneak a little light in here. And then you want to have that same light that kind of follows this way. So that's what creates this line that you see people paint, right? It's more of a neutral tone than a shadow. And then the surrounding highlights is what creates that like fold that you see. Okay. So by having highlights on both sides of that little volume right there, we instead to create that little what you associate with this shape, yeah, is actually highlights on both sides of it. Right? Okay. Pretty cool. Let's look at the difference. All right. So it squares her jaw a little bit, softens some of that like super deep shadow there. The reason I say this is, or the reason I point this specifically out, right, is because when you have this dark shadow, it tends to make the face shape too triangular, right? We don't want it to be quite that triangular. We're gonna square the jaw a little bit, okay? Okay. Vigor Mortis. Hey Eric, I'd like your comments on how to proceed with this bust. The idea is going up with cold lights where I put the focal point, but I'm scared of the transition from the reddish skin tone to a colder highlight. Also, your guidance on the other parts materials would be awesome. Thank you. I'm assuming you've been following Mark's tutorial or something. Also, again, photos, guys. When we're talking about like, take a picture from the front. Like, why am I looking down on this guy? You know? So, first thing I notice is like, look at him next to me. Right? Does he look a little orange to you guys? He's a little orange, right? Yeah, he looks a lot orange. Yeah, don't be afraid of using some cold highlights. Like, I'll show you, like, this is not cold, right? This is cold. Okay? So, as I layer these colder tones on top of his skin, it's going to desaturate the skin, and we're going to get a more, like, natural skin tone. Okay? Right now, it is, like, super salmon-y. Like, this is very green. Okay? But I want you to follow along for a moment. Because it'll come together. Okay, as we mix some of this cool blue-green like into the skin, it might look weird when it's layered like this, right? When you're looking at it like super close. Who's that? Who's that? Orobi 76, hello. Also Miss 10 EU and Anna Jota. Hi, welcome. Sorry I missed you. Yeah, it's like way too orange at the moment. Right? But when you start looking at them at that distance, that doesn't look so weird anymore. Right? So up here it looks a little bizarre, but then when you zoom out it's not so strange. Right? And then we can start to push the lights like even further into these cool tones. So as we shift through these colors and we start pushing really into the highlights, right, we start getting colder and colder. But that means you have to use this blue, you know, elsewhere. You can't just leave it to just the skin, right? You have to use it in the other parts to make it feel like it's more cohesive, right? So now, like, that doesn't look so bluish anymore, right? You'd be surprised what you can get away with like some of this color temperature. Okay. So you have to look at it as like a whole, right? You can now see that like the difference between this and this, okay? Like this is just way too orange, right? And this feels like the mix of the orange, that like really saturated red orange, and these like green blues, these cold colors, then work together to like balance each other out. And then the result is like a super saturated midtone and shadow, but you get this very cold highlight, right? I can even like straight up put this on there. Okay. Like you're going to be like, what is he doing? That's like straight up turquoise, right? But when you see it together, it works fine, right? This is why I say you have to see it in context. But that also means that like the highlights of your whites also need to be, you know, more on the turquoise side. So that everything functions together, right? Now that like turquoisey color starts to make sense in context with each other, like with the rest of the figure, right? Even the like axe handle, right? So the axe handle is a bit shiny, so you do the underlying texture, but then you put this like, if you imagine the axe handle is sort of glossy, it gets this like cool reflection on top. And your brain just goes, yep, that makes sense. I accept this. Okay? No fear. Lights. Give me light. All right. Slaps and ice cream. Marin yep, hello, welcome. And Pepe Leotre, hello, welcome. Did I miss? Yep, Roby76. I think I got you. Hello, welcome everyone. All right, slaps and ice cream. General feedback, por favor. My skin obviously needs work, but I'm on the fence in making the stuff around her neck metal or some sort of cord. I'm still figuring out the gem-like moon too. Okay. I mean, I think it's coming along. It's just like, I like the color palette. It's very Kaha at the moment. I think it works. I think you just need to start blending. I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to mention other than blend away. Yeah, the neck thing is weird. I'm guessing it's some sort of chain is what it's supposed to be, but I'm not positive. Yeah. I mean, just clean up, you know? Like, it just needs to be cleaner. But I guess if I had like some feedback to give you, it's like, you know, make sure like these sort of areas like around the nose are properly saturated. This is a bit of a thing we were talking about, like where you know, base coats matter. Like how clean your base coats are is going to make your life easier or not. And if the shadows are coming up this high, like I would get this shadow nice, right? Make sure it's super accurate. However that shape is. Okay, and then this light would probably come down the face just a little bit more, but depends on how strong her cheekbones and stuff are. One thing I will say here, though, is that when you're painting something like this, right? You have the light coming from above. Realize I'm painting on the wrong layer. Whatever. Fix this. Now we can start thinking about like, okay, the light's coming in from above. Well, what's the first thing it hits? Right? Once it goes past her face, what's it hitting? Her white hair, right? So we can take some of that, this like iridescent tone of her hair, and we can start to work some of that back into her skin, right? So now she's going to get like a bounce light kind of on the shadow side of her face, which will help define that jaw line more, right? Like on her nose, you get a much more saturated bounce light because it's bouncing off of her skin. So you get a very a much more reddish tone. Because the light hits her skin or whatever and it bounces back and you get a more skin tone color. Don't overdo the bounce light though. You do want it to be like pretty subtle. Okay, so something like that. As far as like the moon, yeah, I mean it's working. It is just like, yeah, okay, now start blending it together, you know, just blend and blend and blend away. Blend it up. I would do this a darker color though. This white is going to be too bright. You want to create some like separation between, you want to create some distinction and separation there. Because if you have too much like white silvery colors, it's going to be kind of difficult to see, you know. But yeah, guys, like, I can't stress enough how important it is to, like, when you're working, you know, get a clean base coat. It will save you time later, because now you have to come back and base coat this and then, like, blend it into the skin, right? Like, this has to get cleaned up, and you got to then blend it back, like, blend it all together, you know? So, I honestly think, could be, it's important to establish like these clean layers earlier, right? Instead of like, I don't mind sketching, but you do want to leave yourself with a nice foundation, because like all this stuff here is going to now require you to like come back and clean that up, and then now you've got to blend that into the skin, right? So a little more foundation work, you know, will go a long way to helping you later on. All right, I think that makes sense. Noah. Okay. Face looks good. You gotta finish the eyes, right? Hair's looking good. This, you went too much. Okay, we talked about this on stream, you guys. Like, this was definitely a thing. You've now got to come back and like glaze over this because you've pushed it too far, right? We don't need it to be that bright. So come back with the original color, kind of glaze it down in order to we don't have to go that bright to create a fabric, right? And then we want to reduce the texture. Like this filter will also, here, I'll do it on another layer so you can see it. Like as we filter this on top, it's going to reduce that texture a little bit and sort of blend this together and soften it. So we go sort of heavy at the beginning in order to like lay the foundation of the texture, and then we reduce the texture through glazing and filtering, right? Then you can take some of this lighter, more saturated, something like this that's bright, but it's not like white, right? And you create glazes with this too, and this will start to unify this a little bit. So there's like the dots and stuff underneath, but it's not like super intense. Okay, so you should be able to see the difference now between like, right? I don't know. Let me put these together. Right, like this and this. Okay, we don't want this to overshadow the face. Right now this looks shinier than the face does. Okay, so we have to tone it back. The hair I think looks pretty good. You could maybe use a little more highlights in the hair, not by much, but a little bit. Right, new layer. Right, a few places to like really push that light a little more. He needs like a highlight on his lips. When you do the eyes, he'll need, one thing is like there's not enough white, quite enough white here. That dark line underneath's a little too big, so take and try and extend that white down a little bit further. Get that really sharp corner in the eye. Okay. But yeah, you can, like here's good, but in some of these areas, like you could push this a little bit further. Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, this is nice. Like, good job. Good job following directions. I'm gonna see a bunch of these, aren't I? Well, not me, but I'm not going to have to judge most of these, I assume. But I'm assuming whoever's judging standard is gonna have a bunch of these busts to judge. So whoever gets standard bust category, have fun judging a bunch of Grok or whatever is, however you say his name. Okay, makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it looks good, man. Just you know, tone down the fabric. Okay. Leon. You guys are submitting literally like while I'm... Okay, we're done. Mose, after you, we're done. No more. Also, I'm at 12% battery. What do you have? What is this? Loon? Hey, Eric, would love to hear some feedback on this one. It's still a bit of work in progress, I assume. I'm afraid of the big golden shoulder pen. The big golden shoulder pen? Oh, that shoulder pen. Okay. So very first thing that screams to me, the first thing I'm seeing, you guys know, or maybe you don't, I'm a Death Watch guy, right? So I'm going to ask chat, does this look silver and this look metal and the rest of the armor look black? Or does it all look kind of the same? Same Z's, yeah. Okay, so what do we have to do? We have to use some different coloration here. Like these colors, they're too similar. So first thing is going to be, we want to tone down the black a little bit, and we can use some color in the black. Now, how you want to choose which color you want to use is sort of up to you, but I think you've overdone the highlights. Like there's not enough black in here anymore, right? I use turquoise. So my go-to like dark for my Death Watch is turquoise. I'm not saying it's the correct answer. It's just the one I do, but you need this to be on average darker, okay? You're trying to paint it too much like non-metallic and less like shiny armor, right? So these highlights, they're too much. Okay. You can use any color for this, by the way. I also don't do the edges quite this bright. I try and be very limited when I'm doing the edges on black to like very specific points. Okay. So instead of this like whole top edge being light gray, right? Here, let's tone this thing down, this down. Okay, so now that we've toned this down, we've already started to distinguish that that intersection is now silver. Okay. No, you have to just go back and watch it. So now they have very similar or now there's like a clear value difference between the two. Okay. Then now you can come back with this and go like, okay, I want to make like some light dots, right? So it's more like, all right, this corner gets a like little dot of highlight, right? So I can create some shine spots, but I don't want to do the whole. So this makes it look glossy, right? But I'm not going to do the whole edge. Okay. It's more subtle than that. Okay, so that's how you get a shiny black. All right, so now one's black and one's, so you can glaze over top of it, and then you bring back out the points, you know. Then the other thing I like to do is I like to use, let's do like an overlay. I tend to use a more like slightly bluish tone. So you could go like more turquoise on the metal and then more like bluish on the steel or the silver to get like a bit of differentiation there, right? So that'll give you further differentiation in the two materials. You actually have three, so you have steel, silver, and like black armor. So you have to try and create some differentiation between the three, right? So these keys are silver. I would give them like a slightly more bluish tint or something. And then like if his weapons are steel, right, maybe they're more neutral gray. Okay, so all these little things get like, so now this looks more steel up here. This looks more silver, right? Okay, and then the gold's pretty good, but you need a little bit more. I don't know what your guys' like recipes for these golds are. Every time I see people paint gold, it's always like super gray. It's like really desaturated, like especially in the shadows. Like, so we want some of this more like orangish brown, some like a stronger color here. Okay. So like, don't be afraid to use like a more saturated orangey brown, right? Doesn't mean like a lot, but we want to like create some strong like warm shadows and not these like weird gray midtones. Okay, it probably comes from mixing too much white too early. Or when I say white, I could also mean like light yellow, and it ends up looking like muddy, right? But some of those warm browns will definitely help, and then you want some of these sorts of colors, right? So some of these like intense saturated yellow tones just in the transition areas. Okay. So you're losing out on the color saturation. And you can use desaturated tones too to create like alternate reflections, right? But you need a little bit of that more intense color there in the transition. Okay? So it's like this is a super subtle change, but this like it's a bigger one. Oh, hello. Not Bush. Why didn't I hear that one? That was weird. I didn't hear the raid come in. Welcome in, raiders. Hello. How are you? How was your stream? What were you doing? What were you working on? fairy foundling or founding. No, it's foundling. Hello, welcome. Okay, so this looks like steel armor. This looks like black armor, right? We're under attack. Zug zug. Hmm? Yes. We're complete. Oh, guacamole. A dragon. You guys, it's a dragon. Sarab. Hello, welcome, thank you. All right. Okay. A dragon. Not bad. It just needs more. Some more overall shape. This is another. This is an example of like, oh, I gotta paint all these scales, so you get lost in the detail, right? You're just like, well, I need all this definition on the scales, so I start to lose the overall shape of everything. So and you can see the shininess of the scales here. So what we want is to create a bit more like overall volume, okay? Work. Hmm? Okay, so we're going to push that light a bit more, focusing on the upward facing kind of volumes, right? Focus on the light source, sort of following along with where you can see like the shininess of the paint. Okay, I like the teeth, and like you're doing a pretty good job being defined, but we can create a bit more overall shape here by pushing the light up more, right? So focusing on the general form, then we focus on detail. Right, the shoulder is round, this is rounded. Okay. Now you should see a bit more general shape, okay? Like this to this, okay? One has volume, the other one, it all kind of just feels really neutral, right? Now, what I'm going to say is I don't understand what's going on here. I get a feeling I should know what's going on. JMac Creations, hello. I'm assuming that this is supposed to be like his neck glowing, right? So there's this like blue glow in his neck, but I also assume that these are supposed to be white, right? So this is like white scales going all the way up under his neck. So we need to use that like shadow color, right? And then the glow can only add, okay? So it's like if this is the shadow color of the white scales, we need to start there and then make them brighter with light blues. So we don't immediately use blue because, like, look at this, right? Right here. Okay. What's the number one rule of OSL, guys? What's the number one rule? The one rule to rule them all. Only adds can only make things brighter. So this dark blue that you've put on here doesn't make sense. Okay. It can't make things darker. Alright, so look what, now that I've put the shadow in, so let's fix the neck a little bit. Now that I've put the shadow in, now if I come and make an add layer, right, and I use an intense, like, I don't know what color you're quite aiming for, something like this, right? Seems like the sort of color. Okay, now if I start to add the glow in between, right? So first thing I would do is create the actual, like, lines wherever they went. Okay. Number one rule is light can only get brighter. That's the number one rule. There are other rules. Okay, so now we add something like that, and then we can start to, like, take some and gently, like, add around it, right? So it starts to bloom out and glow on this stuff. So we can get some of that color, but it can't, like, we're never going to get a dark blue, right? What color is this? It's like a gray teal, right? And then these inside parts, man, they're almost white. They're really like this super light, intense teal color. And then you can start now, right? So if you want to add this glow, what color is this really? It's like this sort of magenta-y, or this like turquoisey sort of color, right? So now we can take some of this like turquoisey color over here. Yours is a little more bluish maybe, right? We can grab some like pure of that tone, and we can start to like add this to the scales and stuff. Okay, so we can start to create some glow on the underside of the scales, or these like rock things. But this can't be brighter than the actual glow. Okay? Makes sense? I hope so. If not too bad. Current state, he says, it's looking good. I mean, it was looking good before. It's looking better now. I still think some of your shadows on your white fabric, that like tan white, is probably still a little too dark. But it looks nice. I mean, I don't have any different feedback than I had before, right? So you get the thumbs up. I like the orange. I would maybe try and get a little of this red into some of the leaves also. So you've got like orange leaves, but maybe trying to get like a few dark red leaves that match the phoenix also in the base would be nice. So you can play around with that color a little bit too. Okay. So nice job. Mose, general feedback. All right, Mose. Need to finish her face and do some touch-ups, he says. Well, my question for you is what's going on with the dress? What is this? What is this yellow? I know you're here. What is the intention? Playing around with colors and new paints. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure it's working. It's like you're using a yellow and orange, so it feels like you're trying to do like a sheer fabric type thing in like wrong because it's on the folds. I would go with something more neutral because like you're not doing that elsewhere, right? You're doing like normal highlights on the other parts, like the face and stuff, which the face is pretty good. So you're doing very, very normal lighting on elsewhere, and then you're doing this like weird orangey yellow thing on a kind of purplish fabric, which just causes, and it's like really like you end up with these like super muddy brown colors, right? So in my opinion, I would change this. I would just go with some kind of like nice bluish tone for the highlights. Right, create some contrast with the skin. I like the experimentation, I just don't think it works here. So you could create this like cool warm contrast by having like warmer purpley shadows. There's like little bits of reddish tones that you have in the mids, and then you have this like more lilac-y sort of color highlights on the dress, right? So these sorts of like deep purpley brown, like these like wine reds work as a shadow color, and then you use more like cold desaturated sort of lilac colors as your highlights. Okay, so that's how you can sneak in some warmth. The like the orange just wasn't, this is just like not bright enough to work against this. Like these, the problem that comes up when we do this, right? If I do the thing, I can do the thing, right? You guys know the thing. I mean, if we do this, there's just like no difference in here, right? It just like becomes the same. Where here you can start to see some like shape a little bit more. There's like these values are too similar when playing with this sort of color game. So like you can use crazy colors, but always the value is the most important. All right. Value is king. That's your protein, right? Then your color is your dessert. The skin looks nice. You can maybe sneak in a little bit more red. Also, I think are you cheating a little here? Are you cheating a little bit? This is a real cast shadow, or did you paint that? Yeah, it's real. Okay, that's what I thought. Because this is like a little too good. Yeah, it's also, shows up here. Okay. I mean, maybe try and emulate this. This could be cool. Like, just see what you paint on the paint what you see on the photo, right? Because it's a good reference. Okay, well, cool. Gemini X6, hello, and JMac. Did I miss you? I'm sorry if I did. Okay, and I would even push this a little bit further, just real quick. Whoa, what happened to my color? Where'd it go? Just towards the top, like push that highlight just a little bit more. It's a shiny dress, so you can, silks tend to be a little more shiny, but yeah, something like that. Okay, cool. Guys, thank you very much. Thanks for hanging out. That's everyone this week. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that was informative. I will not be around next week because I will be at Nova Open. So if you're there, come say hello. If you see me, if I'm walking with like this through the hallways, that means I'm going somewhere, but you can still say hi and I might just go, oh, hello, as I walk by. All going to Nova.